My family called me useless until I walked away and they lost everything. My name is Sophia Ingram, and I am 34 years old. I can still remember that scorching Phoenix evening when everything in my life shifted. Summer in the desert is relentless. The air feels heavy, sticky, even when the sun dips below the horizon. The AC in my car struggled, huffing warm air against my face, but I barely noticed. My heart was pounding too loud, drowning out the hum of the highway as I drove toward my parents' house in Desert Ridge. I had rehearsed this moment for weeks. Tonight, I was going to share two pieces of news I believed foolishly that would finally make them proud of me. Inside my purse sat a neatly folded promotion letter. The ink crest, the signature still smelling of fresh toner. It confirmed what I had worked toward for years. I was now a senior project manager at one of Phoenix's top event firms. It wasn't just a new title. It came with responsibility, a six-figure salary, and the validation that all my late nights, at galas, and endless vendor negotiations had been worth it. On my left hand glinted something even more precious, a ring, Evan's ring. He had proposed under a blanket of dessert stars just a month earlier. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't rich, but he was kind. He made me laugh until my stomach hurt, and for the first time, I felt like someone truly saw me. Evan looked at me like I mattered. That was something I never got from my family, and that was why I wanted so badly to tell them. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as my parents' house came into view. A familiar beige stucco home with the same stone-trimmed facade I'd grown up inside, the same place where I'd spent years feeling invisible. Even before I stepped inside, I could hear my father's voice booming through an open window, pride dripping from every word. He was bragging about my brother Steven again. His startup just landed another round of funding. Dad's voice rang out. The investors can't stop calling him. My boy's going places. I parked in the driveway and just sat there for a moment, my stomach twisting. Of course, Steven, the golden child. Always the genius, always the star. And if it wasn't Steven, it was Cheryl, my sister, the family's princess lawyer with her designer heels and her name printed in glossy Phoenix real estate magazines. Then there was me, the middle child, the event planner. The one who, in my parents' eyes, never had a real career. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to push the doubt aside. Not tonight. Tonight, I was going to show them I wasn't just scraping by. I was successful. I was engaged. I was happy. Inside, the house buzzed with chatter. My mother Diane was in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, gushing to Cheryl about her latest downtown condo deal. My dad James leaned against the fireplace, animatedly retelling Steven's startup pitch like it was his own accomplishment. Steven himself sat smugly scrolling through his phone, no doubt checking stock numbers or his Twitter feed. Cheryl laughed, her hair bouncing in that practiced way that always got her attention. And then there was me, Sophia, standing at the doorway with my carefully wrapped family photo album, a gift I had poured weeks into making, clutched awkwardly against my chest. They didn't notice me at first. I cleared my throat, offered a small smile. Hey, Mom, Dad. I brought something for you both, I said, holding out the gift. Diane barely glanced up. That's nice, Sophia. Just put it somewhere. She turned back to Cheryl before I could even reply. The sting hit immediately, sharp and familiar. I set the album on the sideboard, my chest tightening. This album wasn't just a gift, it was a collection of decades of family memories I had painstakingly pieced together. Old Polaroids, school portraits, wedding snapshots. I thought maybe it would remind them that we were a family, that I mattered to, but to them, it was just something to put somewhere. Dinner was more of the same. My father carved the roast chicken, his every word dripping with praise for Steven's brilliance. My mother added her admiration for Cheryl's legal victories, smiling like she was basking in reflected glory. I sat at the table across from them, my promotion letter burning a hole in my purse, Evan's ring digging into my skin like a secret I wasn't sure I was allowed to share. I waited. I smiled politely. I listened. I nodded. And finally, when the timing felt right, I spoke. Everyone, I actually have something I want to share, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. For a moment, the table fell silent. 4 pairs of eyes turned toward me, my father mid-bite, my mother with her glass halfway to her lips, Cheryl raising one eyebrow, Stephen reluctantly pulling his gaze from his phone. I got promoted, I said, my voice steady. Senior project manager. And I hesitated, then pushed forward. Evan and I are engaged. It should have been a celebration. It should have been the moment I'd dreamed of, my family clapping, smiling, maybe even saying they were proud of me. Instead, my father slammed his fork down so hard the sound cracked like a whip. You're the most useless child in this house, Sophia, he said coldly. Planning parties, that's not a real job. Why can't you be more like Stephen or Cheryl? My mother smirked into her wine, amusement flashing in her eyes. Cheryl laughed outright, tossing her hair back. Stephen said nothing, but the smirk tugging at his lips was answer enough. Their words hit like a slap, but what hurt more was how unsurprised I was. I'd heard versions of it my whole life, that I wasn't enough. That what I did didn't matter. Something inside me shifted then. Not anger, not grief. Something colder, clearer. I smiled, slowly, deliberately, watching as Diane's smirk faltered, as Cheryl's laughter died in her throat. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't beg. Instead, I pushed my chair back, the scrape of wood against style echoing in the stunned silence. I stood, slipped my purse over my shoulder, and walked to the door. Sophia, where are you going? My father called, his voice edged with confusion. I didn't look back. I didn't say a word. The front door shut behind me with a sound that felt final. Outside, the Arizona night was warm, the air humming with cicadas. I walked to my car, hands trembling not from pain, but from something sharper, clarity. For years, I had carried them, paid their mortgage when they were behind, covered Cheryl's law school fees, funded my dad's heart surgery. Thousands of dollars, years of sacrifice, and they had the audacity to call me useless. No more. I sat in the driver's seat, pulled out my phone, and typed a single message into our family group chat. No more money. Good luck. Then I hit send, turned off my phone, and drove away. I wasn't running from them. I was finally running toward myself. The next morning, sunlight carved pale rectangles across my bedroom floor. I woke to the quiet, no buzzing texts from vendors, no last-minute crises, no family noise. Just stillness. For a long moment I lay there, staring at the ceiling and feeling the unfamiliar weightlessness of a choice I couldn't undo and didn't want to. When I finally reached for my phone, the lock screen bloomed with missed calls, 42 from my mother, a handful from my father, and two terse texts from Cheryl, call mom now. One message sat alone in the middle of the mess from my dad at 3:07 a.m. Please, I opened our family group chat instead. Last night's message, no more money. Good luck. Waited there like a fuse I'd lit and walked away from. My fingers hovered over the keys, steady in a way my heart was not. Since I'm useless, let's be precise. For 3 years I paid $1,500 a month toward your mortgage. I covered $3,000 of Dad's heart surgery last spring. Cheryl, I paid $5,000 toward your law school tuition. I did it quietly. I did it because we were family. That ends today. I hit send, silenced the thread, and set the phone face down on my nightstand. In the stillness that followed, my apartment felt larger, airier, like someone had opened a window I didn't know was painted shut. Evan knocked lightly and cracked the bedroom door. I made coffee, he said, voice soft, careful. He crossed the room and kissed my forehead. How do you feel? Like I just put my own oxygen mask on, I said. He exhaled a small laugh, relief loosening his shoulders. We sat on the couch with 2 mugs and no background noise, no TV, no podcasts, Just the small clicks of ceramic on wood. You don't have to check your phone, he said. You don't have to do anything. I know. I took a sip, let the heat settle in my chest. I also know they're going to implode. They already were, he said gently. You were just holding up the ceiling. By noon, my phone buzzed with a call from the only family member whose name calmed me, Edward Ingram. My grandfather's voice carried gravel and sunlight in equal measure. Sophia, he said, I read what you sent. I braced. He chuckled a quiet, satisfied sound. About time. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. You're not disappointed. I'm proud, he said simply. Proud that you stopped letting them use your kindness as an ATM. I called James and Diane this morning. I told them they ought to be ashamed. I pictured my father's jaw tightening, my mother's practiced frown. How'd that go? I hung up before the excuses started. A pause. I could hear the faint clink of his spoon in a teacup. Listen to me, kid. You built a life without applause. They took from you and then told you it didn't count. Don't let anyone convince you that setting a boundary is cruelty. Thanks, Grandpa. You come by this weekend, he said. I'll make lemon bars. We'll talk about your wedding, and I'll practice my speech. I smiled into the phone, and it felt like my first real smile of the day. Deal. Well, Evan and I spent the afternoon walking the canal path near Indian School Sun on water. Cyclists threading past. Dogs impatient to smell everything the fallout detonated in Desert Ridge. I didn't see it, but I can tell you how it happened because Edward later told me, and because I know my family like a script I stopped wanting to act in. The envelope came at 1:18 p.m., a final notice of foreclosure stamped in red across the top. My father slit it with a butter knife and read the bank's language efficient, unsentimental, to miss payments, penalties accruing. 30 days before the file transferred to legal. My mother insisted it was a mistake. She dialed the bank. And then my number and then the bank again, crying in increasingly staccato bursts. My father paced a groove in the hallway, muttering about refinancing, about liquidity, about buying time. Cheryl showed up in pressed navy slacks, phone clutched like a talisman. We'll negotiate, she said with a lawyer's certainty and a daughter's panic. We'll propose a forbearance. On what income? My father snapped. Silence knifed the room. Even the air conditioner sounded accusatory. Stephen joined late, caffeine breath and blue lead eyes. His hoodie an attempt at boyish even as a 5 o'clock shadow betrayed the strain of months. My round closes in 2 weeks, he said. I'll float the minimum. You said that last month, Cheryl shot back. Your bridge fell through. Because your friend pulled her term sheet. Because Sophia stopped subsidizing your burn rate, my mother blurted, then clapped a hand over her mouth like she'd said a curse. The name hung between them like smoke. Sophia, not present. Suddenly catastrophic. Sometime after 3, my father suggested they call me for a family discussion. My mother sent a paragraph that sounded like a grant application for grace. We know we've made mistakes. Please come talk. We'll make it right. We're still your parents. She waited 10 minutes, 20. She called again. Straight to voicemail. F4 Cheryl switched tactics. Sophia, I'm sorry if I ever dismissed you. Can we talk sister too? Sister, the message looked neat, italicized by her expensive phone case. It also landed in a blocked thread. I never saw it. I didn't need to. At 5, Stephen texted Evan instead. Tell Sophia to pick up. Evan showed me the message and then set his phone down, face down, both of us choosing the same quiet. By evening, the kitchen had turned into a war room, spreadsheets, half-eaten leftovers. Bank hold music looping and employmentera jazz. My mother's eyelids puffed. My father's tie loosened by a man who insisted on wearing one even to check. The mill, Cheryl's hair frizzed in the humidity her straightener could not defeat. Stephen chewed the inside of his cheek until it bled. When the arguing curdled into accusations. You always favored him. You never told me she paid that much. You let me believe she was freeloading. My grandfather called again. This time he asked them to put him on speaker. You lost Sophia because you refused to see her, he said. His voice was soft and iron at once. She carried you. You sneered. Now you can learn how to walk. My father started to protest. A practiced pivot toward loyalty and duty. Edward cut him off. Don't you dare weaponize loyalty when you've spent years converting it into cruelty. He hung up. They stared at the phone like it had betrayed them by being honest. I didn't know any of that as it happened. At 6 o'clock, Evan and I stood in the frozen aisle of a grocery store debating which ravioli tasted most like a choice rather than a concession. At 7, we ate on the floor because the couch was a mountain of clean laundry and the table was a confusing half-built puzzle. At 8, we watched a documentary with the sound low, and I forgot how to brace. At 9, I wrote my grandfather a note on real paper about the promotion, about the ring, about the lemon bars that tasted like sundaes when I was 7. I sealed the envelope and propped it against my coffee mug like a talisman. I slept through the night. 2 days later, the second letter from the bank arrived at my parents' house. By then, the phone calls from relatives had started. Curious, judgmental, the way family love turns into a neighborhood watch. A cousin asked if I was okay. An aunt asked if my mother needed a casserole or a miracle. My parents told each caller a different version. Sophia is emotional. Sophia is punishing. U.S. Sophia is being manipulated by her boyfriend, and each version sounded truer to them because it prevented the most terrifying admission. Sophia stopped being available. I went to see Edward on Saturday. The desert lit up like copper under a late afternoon sun. He opened the door before I knocked, cane in one hand, small, doing the work of 10 years of apology on behalf of people who never learned how. He made tea. I brought lemon bars from the bakery he liked, because mine always turned into sugar quicksand. We sat at his small round table and let the silence work like a bomb. Tell me about the dress, he said eventually. I laughed. Grandpa, we haven't even set a date. Then tell me about the venue. We're thinking backyard, I said. Twinkle lights. People who clap with both hands and their whole hearts. He nodded as if I described the blueprint for a cathedral. Before I left, he pressed things into my hands. A folded check I didn't want and didn't cash, and a note on stiff cream paper. You don't become small by refusing to shrink for others. It read in his tight old world script. Keep your shoulders back, kid. On the drive home, my phone lit with one last text from my father, a message with no punctuation and too many spaces. The way people type when they're driving emotion to the brink. We can talk if you apologize for embarrassing us and agree to help until we figure it out. I read it twice. Evan glanced over at the red light, at my face, at the way my shoulders stayed low instead of rising to my ears. What do you want to do? He asked. I already did it, I said, and slid the conversation into the archive where old things go to fade. That week I said yes to a new client without asking anyone's permission. I bought a plant I have statistically no chance of keeping alive. I woke up an hour early to run along the canal and then walked because the sky was showing off. I stopped checking my phone for proof that silence didn't mean I was cruel. It meant I was free. Across town, the house in Desert Ridge started to thin out. Decorations my mother bought to impress people who never came. The extra set of patio chairs for parties that never happened. Boxes Cheryl labeled with titles that made her feel less like she was packing and more like she was curating her own museum. Stevens monitors, gone to Craigslist boys who mistook LED lights for success on a Thursday. A white notice taped to the front door caught the afternoon sun. My father tore it down before the HOA president could see. The glue left a square the color of consequence on a Friday. My mother tried one last time, a voicemail full of tears that didn't catch on any truth. You don't know what it's like to be a mother. You don't know how hard this is. I didn't respond because she was right. I don't know how hard it is to be a mother who calls her daughter useless for building a life that doesn't require rescue. On Saturday, Evan and I toured a small house with unpretentious bones and a yard that looked like it would forgive us for not being landscapers. The realtor apologized for the creaky floors. I told her I liked the honesty. We made an offer Monday morning. It was accepted by lunch. That night, I stood in the empty living room and listened to the air conditioner click on and off, a metronome for a song I finally wanted to learn. The ring on my finger caught the lamplight, not loud, just persistent. I texted Edward a photo of the keys in my palm. He replied with 3 words, "Come pick me up." Then a 4th, champagne. We ate takeout on moving blankets and called it a picnic. We argued in good faith about where the bookshelves belonged. We named a quarter Hope and another one coat rack even though we live in Phoenix. And somewhere between the second box and the last, I realized the thing I had wanted from my family: recognition. Praise, permission had always been counterfeit when it was offered with conditions. Not being seen by them hurt. Choosing to see myself changed the gravity in the room. When I finally powered my phone back on that night, it vibrated with a few late messages from numbers I didn't recognize, people my parents had deputized to soften me up. They're really struggling. It's not like them. You're better than this. I deleted each one without opening. I am better than this. That's why I stopped. I slept through another night. The ceiling fan hummed. The house settled. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog barked at a cactus in the dark. In the morning, I made coffee in a kitchen that knew my name. 3 weeks passed, and by then the silence between me and my parents had hardened into something permanent. I didn't call. I didn't answer. My life kept moving forward while theirs buckled under the weight of bills and broken illusions. At my desk one Wednesday afternoon, I reviewed seating charts for a corporate gala when my phone buzzed with a message from Evan. "Foreclosure notice at your parents' house." My body in Desert Ridge just told me. I stared at the screen, my pen frozen above the paper. It wasn't shock. I'd known it was coming the minute I cut the $1,500 lifeline. It was inevitability arriving like a letter with my name on the outside. And there's on the inside, across town, my father opened that certified envelope with trembling hands. My mother's voice cracked as she read aloud the words they dreaded. Final foreclosure proceedings initiated. Without my monthly payments, they hadn't lasted 2 months. I didn't witness the meltdown, but Edward later told me what he heard when my mother called him in hysterics. "We're losing the house, Dad," she sobbed. "Sophia won't help." U.S. Edward's reply was short. "Sophia helped you for years. You won't help yourselves." And then he hung up. For the first time in my life, I realized my grandfather wasn't just protecting me. He was holding them accountable. Meanwhile, Cheryl's polished reputation in Phoenix real estate began to fracture. A high-profile condo deal collapsed when she couldn't cover upfront costs. Investors pulled back. Clients whispered. Her designer blazers no longer masked the desperation in her voice when she begged for extensions. Stephen wasn't faring better. His startup, the crown jewel of his imagined future, was drowning in debt. He picked up overnight shifts at a data center. His eyes ringed with fatigue, his hoodie stained with cold brew. The swagger was gone, the Boy Wonder act had expired, and all of it traced back to me, or rather, to the absence of me. For years I'd been the safety net no one admitted existed. Now that net was gone, and they were tumbling. One Sunday, Edward called me, his voice laced with grim amusement. They had a conference call today, all 4 of them. I was invited, though I think they forgot I'm not in the business of soft landings anymore. What happened? I asked. They screamed. He said simply, "James blamed your mother." Diane blamed James. Cheryl blamed Stephen. Stephen blamed everyone. They circled the blame like wolves eating their own tails. I imagined it the perfect family image, cracking, splintering, collapsing under the truth they'd ignored for years. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood. It was never me who was useless. It was the scaffolding of denial they'd built around their golden children. While they unraveled, my life quietly flourished. At work, my promotion blossomed into something bigger. A month after the fallout, my boss called me into her office again. "Sophia, you've Proven you can handle the Citywood Festival, she said. We're naming you Director of Projects, Director. My title sparkled on the paper like a promise. I'd gone from the cute little event planner my family mocked to leading multi-million-dollar events that shaped Phoenix's calendar. Evan and I celebrated that night with champagne on the floor of our half-furnished Scottsdale home. We laughed until the neighbors probably wondered if we'd lost our minds. But it wasn't madness, it was freedom, pure and earned, the only. Tied to my old life was Edward. He didn't call off an arthritis made phones difficult, but his letters arrived faithfully. Handwritten on crisp stationery, each one ended with the same line, "I'm proud of you, kid." I kept them in a wooden box on my desk, small anchors in a sea of change. Months later, our wedding day arrived. The Arizona sunset spilled gold and crimson across our backyard. Twinkle lights draped from the mesquite trees, casting a glow over the handful of friends who clapped with their whole hearts. Evan stood at the altar, his smile steady and sure, his hands slightly trembling the way mine were. I walked down the aisle in a simple dress, bouquet of dessert wildflowers in hand. The only family member present sat in the front row, Edward. His eyes damp, his posture proud. He leaned on his cane and whispered as I passed, "You look beautiful, kid." The ceremony was short, our vows written in our own words. Promises of laughter, partnership, and never shrinking for anyone. When we kissed, the cheer from our friends rose into the desert night, loud and unburdened. No James, no Diane, no Cheryl, no Stephen, not even an empty chair for them. This day was for me, for Evan, for us. Later, under a sky full of stars, Evan and I danced barefoot on the grass. Edward clapped along from his chair, his smile brighter than any spotlight. And in that moment, I wasn't the invisible daughter, the overlooked sister, or the family's financial crutch. I was just Sophia, whole enough. Word trickled to me weeks later through mutual friends. My parents had lost the Desert Ridge house. They downsized to a cramped apartment in a worn-out complex on the edge of Phoenix. Cheryl's once golden name in real estate now carried cautionary edge. Stephen was still grinding overnight shifts, his dream of tech stardom evaporating with every missed payment. Did I feel triumph? No, only clarity. Their collapse wasn't my doing, it was theirs. I'd been their bandage, but I was never there. Here, what I felt most was peace. I'd built a life with Evan, a career that soared, a home that echoed with laughter instead of criticism. I'd chosen boundaries and discovered that they weren't walls, they were doors leading to myself. That night, as Evan and I sat on the porch, the desert air cool around us, I thought of what I would tell anyone in my position. You don't have to beg to be seen. You don't have to pay to be loved. You don't have to carry people who mock your strength. You can walk away. And when you do, you'll realize the weight you've been carrying was never yours. I lifted my glass to the stars, whispered a quiet thank you to Edward for being the one anchor in a sea of chaos, and leaned against Evan's shoulder. For the first time, I wasn't running from my family. I was running toward myself.